Hello everyone, it's Kate and I am from Sleep Time Consulting, and I am here to talk to you again, another one of my Let's Talk About series, because today we are talking about bedtime settling. So I asked my followers about their issues with bedtime settling and kind of what problems they came across, and you've come through and you've given me loads of questions and loads of kind of, I suppose, topics to kind of handle. So what I've done is I've gone through all the topics and the questions that everyone's kind of put in about bedtime settling, and I'm just going to talk about it for a bit. And if I don't answer your question, you can get in touch and I will happily give you some more details about your own situation. So let's have a think about it. So we're talking about bedtime here. We're talking about why is it that your child takes a while to fall asleep? Why is it that they might struggle to settle? And so I'm going to kind of run through the main topics and explain them a little bit more about how you can perhaps alter things and how you can adjust things to get your bedtime back on track, because that's what I'm all about, is giving you the information to help empower you to make some changes to help your routine and get your child sleeping well. So really, the first thing I'm going to say, I think, is one of the most important things, and it's all about saying, look, your child can take a little while to fall asleep. Actually, it's quite normal for them to take between 5 to 15 minutes to fall asleep. So it's worthwhile considering that whilst you are kind of going through your frustrations around how they're settling, and knowing that actually, naturally, we don't just fall asleep straight away. So if your child is falling asleep straight away, it can mean that they are not in the right level of tiredness. They could be overtired. If they're taking a super long time to fall asleep, then it could mean that they're not tired enough. So all of these things need to come into balance. So have a look at how long it takes your child to fall asleep. If they're taking shorter than 5 minutes and perhaps longer than about 15-20 minutes, then maybe there'd be some tweaking to be done. Now, the other thing to consider, the second thing to consider in this, is looking at your sleep environment, right? We have at the moment gone through the clock change, so that means that it's going to be much lighter in the evenings when we're putting our little ones down, which was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this chat, because it often throws people. We often get a lot more resistance because it's light. So your body is confused, their body clock, their circadian rhythm isn't used to all this light at that time. So we need to help them, and one of the best ways of doing that is to play into the hands of a natural helper, and that natural helper is melatonin. So melatonin is the sleep hormone that's produced by the body in accordance with two things. So the first thing is about kind of what time the child falls asleep, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But the second thing is the light levels. So as the dusk kind of creeps in, that's when the body naturally would produce a level of melatonin to help us feel sleepy. So when we're trying to kind of keep a structure and a routine that we've chosen for our children, then actually it's important to recognise that we need to help that melatonin to be produced. So to do that, you need to lower the light levels, ideally an hour, maybe 2 hours before bedtime. And so this could just look like, kind of maybe closing the curtains or blinds, turning down the lights if you're able to, on that journey to sleep. So on that routine, that journey to sleep, it's all about keeping the light levels low. That will help them start to feel sleepy if you're having struggles around bedtime. And then inside your child's sleep environment, I would recommend making sure it's as dark as possible. Darkness is definitely your friend because it helps you to produce the melatonin. So therefore, it's really important, if you've got any kind of light coming in, that you're using something like a travel blackout blind, and maybe a blackout blind as well, just kind of cutting out any other light creep that might come in, because the minute that light's in there, they're going to find it much, much harder to settle, and they might kind of use that as a reason not to fall asleep, and then you want to kind of work back from that to help them to settle more effectively. So keep it as dark as possible. Over 2 years, you can think about something like a nightlight if they're a little bit concerned or scared of the dark. Before then, really shouldn't be necessary. So keep it up to as dark as you can. And then the other thing around the kind of the environment, especially around this time of year, and if you've got maybe a toddler that's a bit cheeky and likes to challenge, shall we say, showing their personality, then keep the sleep environment really simple. So if you've got a lot of kind of contest around kind of playing with toys perhaps that might be out in the room, or lots of teddies in the cot that are used as a distraction purpose, then maybe just think about removing them from that environment or tidying them away around bedtime, just to help solidify what's going on with that kind of sleep situation. Now, for younger children and older ones as well, I do promote the use of an independent space for settling, because that allows the child very little confusion about what the purpose of nighttime is for. Kind of they can be sharing with a sibling, absolutely fine, because that child will be sleeping as well. But actually giving them their own space after the recommended time limit, which is 6 months, against the kind of the recommendations from the Lullaby Trust, then giving them their own space to settle is really powerful to help them understand that's what's going on with sleep, and it's not, time to play, it's not time to be doing other things, it's all about kind of settling down to sleep. So their own space is really vital. Now, the other thing we need to think about is this timing angle. So we spoke about it a little bit at the beginning. We need to make sure that you recognise the right time for your child to sleep, because if they are overtired, so if they've been awake too long, then they can really struggle. And it's a really common thing, and it came up in one of the questions, that they can actually be very tired but not want to settle, and that's just because they are in that sort of overtired state, which is almost like they're kind of running on adrenaline. Their cortisol levels are building up because they're too tired to settle, so they go a bit frantic. And that looks like different things in different children, but really what we're looking at is a fussy child that's a bit irrational, or is just talking or is just behaving sort of, I suppose, a bit irrationally. My son, when he does this still, even at this age, he just talks rubbish, and you're like, what is he talking about? And I remember when they were younger, they would just, run around like crazy loons because they were just too tired to be able to settle. If you recognise that in your child, easiest thing to do, bring bedtime half an hour earlier, maybe something along that. Be aware of your child's awake time, and if you don't have my awake time guide, then please do grab it. You can get it over the website, sleeptimeconsulting.co.uk, if you sign up to the newsletter, or I'll be sending it out with my latest newsletter as well. So you want to make sure that overtiredness doesn't creep in. Now, undertiredness is when they've not had enough awake time, and this can creep in sometimes really sneakily if your child has what people call a danger nap. So if they had a really late nap, even if it's for 10-15 minutes, sometimes that just powers them through, and they'll find it really tricky to settle. So if your child's taking a really long time, and by that I mean kind of over 20 minutes, maybe over half an hour, maybe consider the fact that they're not quite tired enough to sleep. And so if you're confused about overall undertiredness, then undertiredness often is kind of more just cheeky behaviour, whereas overtiredness is more that kind of irrational, frantic kind of behaviour. And maybe just take a step back for a few days, make a note of the tired signs, and rather than sort of clock watching, watch your child for a bit, and then you can actually see if you can learn something from what they're showing you in terms of the timing, and then you can start to adjust things around bedtime to help them to settle. Now, then we get on to the last part, which is really the what if. So there was a lot of people talking about long periods of crying perhaps, or getting out of bed, or just generally messing around. So I would say what I would do is really build a kind of a routine that works for you. No one routine will look the same because we all have slightly different techniques and different needs and etc. If you've got an older child, maybe draw it out with them, keep them on track. A younger child will really respond to what's going on, kind of in their world, and they'll see the same thing be repeated each day, so they'll understand that's where kind of sleep is coming. So once you've got your kind of routine built up, you want to be settling your child down. Now, if you've got a younger baby or an older one, then you don't want to be kind of putting up with anything you're not comfortable with. So if you put them down and they are crying and getting upset, then maybe offer them some comfort and maybe connect with them, help them to stay calm, and then over time perhaps you can reduce that reliance. And that's a great way of just keeping things calm, getting things back on track, because if you can start to kind of introduce that whole concept of settling perhaps a bit quicker and settling a bit calmer, that will build and build and build over time. Now, with an older one that might be able to get out of bed, and I wouldn't recommend kind of moving away from a cot scenario until about 2.5 years, if you can manage that. For any issues with that, just stay consistent. Stay with your child if they need it, help them to settle, back away as we spoke about before. If they get out of bed, put them back in again, keep a boundary line and say, okay, no, you must get back. Try not to get angry or upset about these things. Just keep consistently doing it. If you've got real boundary pushing, or if you've got some sort of cheeky toddler behaviour, again, showing personality, not a bad thing, then just stay consistent. Show them what you're asking, explain to them, stay with it, and honestly, within a 2 to 3 days, often they will find that they will just switch in and things will just calm down a hell of a lot more. So it's really important to kind of have that consistency and have that kind of that approach. So that's it really from a bedtime issue. So we're not been really talking about the settling itself. We've been talking about what resistance you've been meeting at bedtime. And I spoke about making sure that you're understanding how long it takes them to fall asleep. So between 5 to 15 minutes is very, very normal. And then looking at their environment, making sure it's nice and dark, they've got their own clear, safe space to sleep. Looking at the timing angles of the routine and whether they're overtired or undertired, and then what to do what if they get out of bed, what if they start crying. And that's all about being consistent, responding to them in a way that works for you, in a way that kind of helps them to sleep. And that's kind of my top tips. Obviously everyone's sleep situation is different, so if that didn't quite work for you, or if you've got a question that I didn't really get to, or if I didn't really address it, then obviously you can pop on over to Sleep Time Consulting and you can get in touch. I'm always happy to kind of answer any questions. I do my Q&A on a Monday over on my socials, and I'm always looking at my sleep help form, which is where you can sign up and then let me know if you would like to get any sleep help. My next sleep school is coming on the 16th of April, and I'm really excited about that. So this is my value-driven online course where I am there with you for 2 weeks, helping you get your sleep back on track. And that's going to be one of the main things I'm going to be focusing on the next few days. So I will leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and do let me know if you have any other issues with bedtime resistance. Take care. Bye bye.